Now, the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown will outline his vision for constitutional review tomorrow, from overhauling the House of Lords to increased devolution. Gordon Brown has consulted Labour's regional mayors as part of the review process, which is to be published tomorrow. Jamie Driscoll is a Labour mayor for North of Tyne and joins us on the programme now. Jamie, good morning. Welcome along.
Good morning, Reya.
How much do you welcome a review of the Constitution?
I think it's essential. There's two things that it gives you. It's about dealing with growth and it's about dealing with trust. Both of those things are linked. You know, on the news this morning is the latest person in politics to have been involved in a scandal. And part of the problem is there isn't really a constitution for holding people to account. And the other part of it is our country is wildly unequal. Unlike any other advanced economy, you know, we have endemic levels of child poverty in large parts of our country. And it's about dealing with that. So if I give you an example, I've been mayor for 3.5 years. It was a brand new organisation, had to build it from scratch for the global pandemic. We had adult education devolved to us, and this is the training of chefs, welders, basic computer skills, things like that for adults. There were 22,000 enrolments in the year before COVID. Since we've taken it up, it's 33,000 enrolments, a 49.7% increase for the same money. So you can deliver things so much better when they're devolved. And Gordon and his team have looked at the structures that would enable this to be more consistent. Because at the moment, it's very much an ad hoc negotiation with government to get things.
Reforming the House of Lords is not, however, without its challenges. What are some of those challenges of replacing the Lords with perhaps an elected chamber?
There's the need to make sure that we respect the primacy of the House of Commons. That is what people vote for in general election. That would still be the way that the government would be elected. But I think we have 826 people in the House of Lords. You can't actually fit them all in. If there ever was a big contested vote, I don't know how they'd do it. And so you've got to make sure that you have representation. And it is called the United Kingdom, and it really doesn't feel like that at the moment. So you'd want to make sure there's representation from Northern Ireland, from Scotland, from Wales, and also from the English regions. I think rather than just one big lump of England, where places that I represent in the northeast of England or places in the southwest like Cornwall, they feel a long, long way from Westminster. So those things need to happen. Now, the legal process, that's someone who's a constitutional expert more than me is going to have to say exactly how you would do it, how you would persuade the Lords to vote to abolish themselves, whether you would pack it with a whole new wave of Lords to just get the vote through. I really don't know the details.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? That in reality, I mean, it's all well and good having this conversation. Is it really going to happen is the question.
In terms of the things that are in there, now this covers a lot of things. It covers how we hold our politicians to account. And I do know Gordon and his team did a lot of research on this. And the least trusted people in public life are MPs and Lords. It depends where you go in the country. They're all vying for bottoms, either the MPs or the Lords. The most trusted people are local councillors and elected mayors. And in between, you have things like school governors, trade union leaders, civil servants. So there is public support for it, number one. And secondly, it's more to do with the structures, Reya, that make a difference about how you get the powers out of Whitehall. Because when you have people deciding, often hardworking, talented people in the civil service, but working from Southwest One in London, deciding a one-size-fits-all for a country of 68 million people, I think, then it's not going to work. So it needs to happen. And part of that is making sure we have proper representation from the nations and regions.
You say there's public support, and yet for people asking whether you support your local MP or your local mayor, and the answer to that resulting in you believing that there's public support for deep reform of the Lords, that's quite a different thing. I mean, it's quite a jump, a leap to make there, isn't it?
In terms of where support lies and do people want things cleaning up, I think people really do. The idea of cleaning up politics in some way, where you have a situation, and we're seeing it with Boris Johnson's latest attempt to get some of his mates' seats in the House of Lords, the Russian newspaper owner getting a seat in the House of Lords as a favour, these sorts of things, that really does rankle with people. So they want change. Now, the exact nature of the change, I think in general, if you do a big survey, you're going to get lots of different answers, because people in their daily lives, the number one thing they think about at the moment is, have I got any money in my pocket? There's a cost of living crisis. They're not going to be coming up sketching on the back of an envelope plans for detailed constitution. But that's all the more important, actually, that somebody picks it up. And someone like Gordon, who was Prime Minister, who was Chancellor, and who's a fantastic elder statesman, I think is exactly the right person to be looking at the detail. And he's spoken to lots of different people. He's certainly spoken to me and my colleagues as mayors. He's spoken to local government people. He's spoken to huge amounts of research in terms of focus group, talking to people. So it's that deliberative democracy process where you actually start to talk about the details rather than a headline. And if we look at something like the way Brexit was done, do you want to be in, do you want to be out? Yes, people had an opinion on that. But we saw it's rumbled on and it's still rumbling on, because unless you get the detail right, and you're not really making things better.
I know you can't, Jamie, give us any of the details of this review process, of which we will see more when it's published tomorrow. But as you mentioned, you've been speaking to Gordon Brown. How closely have you been working with him?
There's a few things in there very much about what's called fiscal devolution. So it's about making sure we get the right money to the right place without just sticking loads of taxes on people locally. So one of the things that, one of the targets I've got from central government is to create 10,000 jobs over 30 years, direct jobs, not these inflated figures that include multipliers. And so by now we should have about 1,200 jobs. We've created 4,800. So we've done 14 years progress in 3.5 years. But I don't get any more money for that. So it's the powers that we need to be able to make a difference in places. So where you have large numbers of people, we're creating lots of jobs, but there's skill shortages. And it's about making sure that we've got the right things out of Whitehall to work in the local areas. So we've had a lot of discussions about what is needed in our local economy. I'm also in discussions with the current government, by the way, because we're in the middle of negotiating our North East devolution deal, which I hope will be over the line very, very soon. It did get delayed by the various instabilities in central government, it's fair to say. And it's things like, you have a national careers service, but a local skills service. So they're not joined up. That's the sort of thing that needs to happen. So it's been feeding in. How do we get the powers to raise more money without putting more taxes on people? And there's a lot can be done in that area, such as land value capture when we put new railway lines and the value of the land shoots up. But the people who keep it are the people who've done no work. They just happen to own the land. And it's about taxing the windfall element on that land so that we can then start to fund things, get a better public transport system immediately. It's the powers to do those things that I think will be in the report that we'll be talking about tomorrow.
Okay, and we'll see more of that, as you mentioned, when it's released, when it's published tomorrow. But Jamie, as the mayor, the Labour mayor for North of Tyne, how high up the agenda is this issue for the people of Newcastle, North Tyneside, Northumberland? How often are they telling you the thing that is number one on my list of needs in the short and long term is deep reform of the House of Lords?
It's not deep reform of the House of Lords, right? It's deep reform of our politics. And the two key things that people want is they want a better economy, which is everything to do with the cost of living crisis. And when I talk to business leaders, they're saying that they want powers devolved to local areas. So, yeah, the specific details of exactly how many people you would have in an alternate elected chamber in the House of Lords is not top of people's list, and it's not going to be. But bringing powers so that things work for their area is actually, in our part of the world, I think, number one issue. When people were asked, let's have a look, see, what is the most important thing in deciding how financially successful someone is? The number one thing in the North East was where they live. So people want powers in their region. So I don't think the people of the North East want independence, but they do want Devo, and they do want something pretty close to Devo Max.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Jamie, really good to speak to you. Thank you for your time. Jamie Driscoll, Labour Mayor for North of Tyne.